Indonesia, June 2024. 210 critical government agencies were crippled in one fell swoop. Immigration services in disarray, customs officers locked out of systems, and travellers trapped in airports and at ferry terminals, dealing with delays that continued for a full week. This widespread disruption across an entire nation stemmed from a single attack on Indonesia's national data centre. And perhaps more shockingly, the group responsible had only been active for around a week before it crippled Indonesia's local government services and prompted calls for the Minister of Communications and Information to resign. Initially demanding $8 million for the data encryption key, the group signed off their ransom note with their new code name, Cipher. So, Nick, what do we know about Cipher?
Yeah, so Cipher is a ransomware as a service group, particularly aggressive growth strategy, and really rose to fame by targeting critical infrastructure in Southeast Asia. So the group emerged in June of 2024, and it was only a week before their high-profile attack on the Indonesian temporary national data center. In this particular case, the government actually refused to pay the ransom. Cipher actually, and strangely, released the decryption key for free. Cipher, they target critical infrastructure, law enforcement, military, and they've been active primarily in the Asia-Pacific region, Europe, North America, and South America as well. So they're a threat for all of the regions.
Thank you, Nick. Here to help us understand more key details about Cipher's motivations and the implications, Nick and I are joined by Group IB's Head of High-Tech Crime Investigations Team for the APAC region, Jennifer Soh. Welcome, Jennifer. Can you give us a little bit of background on your experience?
So I have been with Group IB for almost 5 years, and I'm the head of the High-Tech Crime Investigation Team, covering just the Asia-Pacific region. In my role, I'm responsible for leading investigations into the cyber threat landscape and, of course, keeping track of activities across our mass actors. I also work closely with various law enforcement agencies worldwide, including our partners like Interpol, Europol, and, of course, with other organizations and partners in the fight against cybercrime. So this is really vital in ensuring successful cybercrime operations and disruption of cybercriminal activities. And I also do frequently partake in investigation discussions with law enforcement agencies worldwide, and to really bring forward investigation strategies to produce a positive outcome of criminals takedown. So some of the successful operations that we have together with our partner Interpol would be like Operation Secure, Operation Falcon. We also do work closely with the law enforcement agencies to take down cyber criminals. And one of the most notable ones would be the Operation Distant Hill, which we contribute to the arrest of the developer of Android malware Trojan, as well as we also contribute to the arrest of the threat actor called Disarray, who is responsible for data breaches across many countries, led by Royal Thai Police as well as Singapore Police Force.
Jennifer, it sounds like you're a very busy lady. Well, thanks for taking the time to join us. Nick, Cipher, what do we know at the moment about their motivations?
Yeah, so thanks a lot for the introduction, Jennifer, and glad to have someone like you on our team to actually disrupt cyber criminals. So talking about Cipher specifically, like most ransomware as a service groups, their key drivers are financial gain. They're financially motivated by nature. They want to scale their operations. Typically, they work in unison to what other ransomware as a service groups do. So they encrypt sensitive data, disrupt operations, and then demand money for decryption keys. Typically, they also work on double extortion. So victims also are blackmailed, potentially sensitive data is stolen, and that sensitive data is then ransomed as well as given access to their business once again.
So for large-scale attack like the one on Indonesian National Data Center, whereby it hosts actually many other government agency services, are sort of reputation building exercises for them. Especially in many of the ransomware as a service group, they actually operate like legitimate business. They hire people, they post ads, they hire jobs like pen testers, malware reverse engineers, or even developers. And they also frequently advertise their services on the forums. And this attack, which really came so soon after the group was formed, they functions to advertise their ability to prospective affiliates, who want to work with the ransomware group. This really shows that though they are really serious about the threats they make.
Yeah, definitely important for ransomware as a service groups like Cipher to take care of their brand, to really curate their brand, to make other affiliates want to work with them, and also to make businesses take them seriously when they demand ransom.
Yeah, I think in this case as well, they released a statement, didn't they, apologizing for the attack and then released the data for free? I mean, what does that tell us?
Yeah, it was a super interesting entry into the ransomware as a service market for this particular group. We fully expected to see the data for Cipher, on their leak site, and they actually posted, "We made an independent decision to not continue with our operation on this particular case." So a really interesting development, especially for their first case, and especially because the brand for ransomware as a service groups are really important.
Yeah, and this actually raises many puzzling questions, such as whether or not they can actually exfiltrate content from their victims, or no, they are actually claimed to be, or are they really considering the repercussions because all the media attention, including the various government agencies, are actually monitoring them. So when IB actually first investigated into them, we actually monitored their data lake sites, and we found that the data was not published for most of the victims that we monitor. And though it's important to note that this attack itself has already caused many functionalities of the government operations to be down, such as like the shutdown of services. There are people stuck at borders and in the airports as well. These are all happened regardless. So the attack itself has already a huge impact on the citizens, on the government, even across the nation, even without the direct payment of that ransom money.
And this attack obviously took place in Indonesia, but what are the dangers then for other regions?
Yeah, I think that's one of the most important things when looking and researching what cyber criminals are doing is that cyber criminals aren't strict with geographical boundaries, right? Oftentimes they want to learn, they want to experiment, they want to test their tactics, their techniques, and their tools in one location. They want to perfect their operations so it's scalable. And once they've done that, they're going to start this activity more worldwide. So it's really important for businesses to understand what cyber criminals are doing in other regions and what might affect me soon.
Yeah, and I totally agree with Nick. So no region is actually safe from any particular group, even if their interests initially retains for maybe one country, but they are eventually going to expand further to the rest of the world. And for us, Group IB, we have actually concluded that Cipher and the other groups such as SenseQ, No Name, and Estate Ransomware could be related to each other due to the similarities in their ransomware notes, the contact details, as well as the Tor websites. And this group have been known to operate in France, Malaysia, Hong Kong, USA, Italy, and Lebanon.
We've covered ransomware groups in the past, and they have, by and large, targeted private operations, looking to extort large cash sums out of companies. What's the motivation to target a national infrastructure rather than a private business?
So there are actually quite a number of reasons. And the first one, of course, targeting a huge infrastructure like the National Data Center. This actually helped to boost their reputation. It's sort of like a marketing tactic that they can use to boost their reputation, improve the relationship between them and other threat actors. But really, it's about the domino effect of the attack like this. So any attack on any key piece of infrastructure give attackers more bang for their buck. And they aren't just taking down one organization, they are actually affecting the whole nationwide, whereby a lot of the services, whether it's government or private, they all rely on it. And especially, when the people are being stranded at airports after the brain Cipher attacks on the data center, probably didn't even consider that a single attack on something like that could actually impact the daily lives of a citizen.
Yeah, for sure. I love the word or the phrase, Jennifer, bang for your buck, right? And at the end of the day, these cyber criminals are operating a business like we talked about before, right? So you imagine if you go wake up in the morning, you try to catch the bus to go to work and you can't pay, or you try to take money out of the ATM and you can't get it. What's going to be more impactful, that or your local bakery not being able to give you bread that morning? So I think it's all about how do we cause maximum disruption as a ransomware as a service group to get maximum financial benefit at the end of the day.
So in this attack, there was 200 critical government agencies plus went offline. Is it common for a single attack to have such a wide impact?
It really depends on the victim, who the trackers has targeted. But this definitely is not a rare case, especially for a national data center, whereby there are a lot of government services are hosted there. So once it's down, definitely you would expect a range of services supplying to the citizens of Indonesia to be down. And because of this, the national data center can't even operate and deliver their services.
Yeah, I think when I look at what can be the impact to me as a private citizen and what we talked about before, ransomware as a service groups, they want to maximize their profit, and that's done by maximizing impact. I think one of the scariest things of this day and age is actually attacks on critical infrastructure. So not being able to take out your money from the financial infrastructure, not being able to use public transportation, lights, fuel, electricity, not being able to be delivered to your home. These are some of the things that I think are critically important for people and also becoming critically important for ransomware as a service operators. If you look at some of the recent past events for ransomware as a service groups like the Colonial Pipeline in 2021, this had a huge impact on the American pipeline system carrying gasoline across the United States. And it even had, an impact on the price of gasoline and also fuel shortages reported in multiple different states during that attack. Even up to 87% of stations had run out of fuel during that. So when I look at if I was a ransomware as a service operator, what could be the most critical organization or operation to target to maximize my benefit? Critical infrastructure, financial systems, electricity, hospitals. These are some of the things that are critically important for a government and a citizenry to ensure it's protected.
Yeah, so what Nick has mentioned is really just a good example of the real world implications of an attack like this. So though the attack only focused on one particular company, and the effects is something like a domino, it was felt by ordinary people throughout America and even made their way to the president's desk.
What kind of impact would we be looking at for an attack on, say, a defense contractor?
So I think when you look at recent past, again, attacks on different military or defense organizations have been increasing. It's become a more important tool within a nation state repertoire to actually conduct attacks against defensive organizations, whether that be to conduct espionage and collect information about what the adversary is doing from a defensive perspective, or actually disrupting defensive operations, whether that be radar tool sets, whether that be different drone services that rely on software and services that can be disrupted. So I think it's essential for a nation that's wanting to protect themselves to understand that there's an adversary on the other side that's wanting to see what they're doing and also disrupt it.
Jennifer, how do you see that playing out for an energy provider, for example?
So for an energy provider, definitely would we actually see more immediate widespread of disruption from the attack itself. You can imagine the chaos, that would ensue if the energy supply chain begin to fall apart. There will be no electricity in houses, in buildings, mass power outages, even crippling essential services. The risk to the public safety is significant, especially if it's like a hospital. The tools or the surgery that may be ongoing for that period of time, when there's no electricity, all the surgeries will fail and it will actually impact someone's life and death. And of course, there will be also the economic losses that stems from businesses who are unable to operate, especially in the event for like manufacturing, whereby they do need to operate 24/7. And the financial strain could be levied at the impacted supplier. So there will be definitely delivery gaps that would likely cause further disruptions that could actually last for weeks or maybe even months, even after the services is restored.
Yeah, and these really aren't thought exercises anymore. I think we've seen this proven by different ransomwares as a service groups like Cipher, having already targeted national critical infrastructure like energy.
Yeah, so we're talking about, genuinely dangerous levels of disruption here. It's not just, financial impact, right?
100%.
Yes. We are actually just potentially just one hack away from crippled national infrastructure. And if the malicious actors really choose their target with a mind to cause lasting chaos, they could easily have an impact beyond their initial scope.
We've talked a bit in previous episodes about the way that organizations are interlinked these days, and what that means if a customer or a partner isn't as secure as your own infrastructure. Jennifer, do you have anything to add about how that plays into attacks like the Cipher one?
So if something happens to a central organization and everyone is served by that organization, whether is it individuals or other businesses, they will all be impacted. That's why it's important to ensure that members of your supply chain match your level of preparedness, so you can actually conduct like incident recovery drills or disaster recovery drills, just to make sure that you are prepared for all this kind of attacks. And it really only takes one weak link, and the weak link can come from anywhere and still impact you. And business resilience should also include considerations on how to respond in the event that a central organization goes dark. So you have to define your dependencies, know your assets, and learn what a successful cyber attack on one of those could mean for you. And this will actually help you to be prepared in the event it happens. And of course, to start off, you can also ask yourself questions. Where does your data come from? How it was being protected? What system do you use? How frequently it is being updated? To prevent any vulnerabilities from being exploited. Are your recovery plans hosted solely online? Do you have any backup paper copies? And of course, the most important thing, what is the change of command in the event of a cyber incident? Are they prepared? Do you have the list of who to call, which owners to call, let's say if one of their servers is down?
Great advice, Jennifer, and great questions to ask. Speaking about, recommendations and things, how can institutions and critical partners prepare for the likelihood of being targeted in such an attack?
Yeah, I think it's not the likelihood anymore. It's the reality, right? These ransomware as a service groups will target you at some point in time, and being prepared and understanding who your adversary is first and foremost and what you're going to do about it when you are targeted is essential. So, I think about practical things. For example, understanding all of the different ransomware as a service groups, understanding their tactics and techniques that they've employed to target different organizations. There's a lot of overlap. They're not doing really special things in order to target these organizations. So really understanding how are they gaining initial access? How are they moving laterally in your network? And making sure that you have the necessary controls in place to detect these things. These are essential and not necessarily difficult things to do. Understanding, of course, what your perimeter looks like to the adversary. So using something like attack surface management, and employing, can I detect these different tactics and techniques on my external perimeter that ransomware as a service groups would use? And then I start to look at, what are you going to do when you're actually hit? So what does my incident response plans look like? Jennifer mentioned, do we have backups in place? I like to also think about other things, not just IT and cybersecurity. So what are the lawyers going to do? What are the PR and marketing departments going to do? How are we going to communicate to our customers? These are all critical things that you should really think about, not if, but when these types of criminals actually target you.
Yeah, and we have seen a lot of security advisories out there, and there are also like frameworks such as NIST, that guides you on how to better secure your data, your systems. So all this user advice also applies, especially enforcing multi-factor authentication to reduce the risk of unauthorized access to systems. Because typically for ransomware, the initial vector is always compromised accounts or weak accounts. And of course, to really strengthen your threat intelligence posture, to really know the different indicators of compromise from different various threat groups, so that you can do constant monitoring for them to check whether if your organization was being targeted by them. And of course, organization must always periodically review and update their incident response plan, especially the crisis playbook, so that in the event of an incident, they know what to do, they are prepared, and they can resume the operation as fast as possible. Of course, as part of proactive, continuous monitoring, organizations should also do threat hunts, to find whether is there any threat actors that have been hidden inside your organization, lying dormant. And this is really essential because typically these kind of groups have already been collecting your data for quite a while. So it's important to do these threat hunts to really find out them quickly and then eradicate them. And of course, to really subscribe to a trusted threat intelligence feed, whereby they can provide you information about threat actors, about indicators of compromise, to really keep you up to date with the latest cyber attack trends as well.
And in the event that critical infrastructure did go down, what sort of things do organizations need to know to get back up and running again?
So when any organization suffers from a cyber attack, it's really down to the incident response team, because they would be the first one in line to react on an incident, to ask information, know how that happened, and to analyze the impact. So this is where the team, they actually steps in and begin the process of establishing the impact severity, collecting and preserving the evidence, which is very important. And of course, to really understand how the attackers move through the network, and if they have already moved to other parts of the network infrastructure. So the more information an organization can gather about an attack, the higher the likelihood they will be protected from undergoing another in the future.
Yeah, I think those are really great points, Jennifer, about having a competent incident response team. I'd like to probably reiterate a few things about items that you didn't mention. Thinking outside of cybersecurity, how are we going to communicate with our customers? How are we going to communicate with our third parties? I think it's essential to think about your brand during this particular moment. It can be highly impacted, and responding not only from implementing backups, hopefully that you have, implementing your incident response team, getting your systems back up and running, but really understanding how am I going to protect my brand as well while I get my business back up and running can be extremely important, as well.
That's really great insights. Thank you both for the time today. And thank you, Jennifer, for jumping on the podcast. It's great to meet you finally. And I hope everything goes well in APAC.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jennifer. Congratulations on the promotion again.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Your data is valuable and it's under attack. Cyber espionage groups, financially motivated threat actors, ransomware attackers, and other criminal enterprises are on the rise. Working in secrecy to dismantle security perimeters, they spread like a virus through the web, stoking geopolitical tensions, holding businesses to ransom, and flooding criminal marketplaces with sensitive information. These groups thrive in secrecy now more than ever. Knowing who your adversaries are is critical. So join us as we ask who's behind the world's most prolific cybercriminal groups. What are their tactics, their motivations, and their impact? Who are the world's masked actors? Masked Actors is an independent podcast from Group IB, a leading voice in the fight against cybercrime. The threat landscape evolves quickly, but all information was correct at the time of recording and based on Group IB's High-Tech Crime Trends Report 2025. Join in the conversation online using the hashtag #MaskedActors. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Thanks for listening. See you next time as we uncover more of the world's top masked actors.